Watch this. No way!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Cookie Jar Golf Podcast. I am Tom Mills, and as always, I am joined by Sam Williams.
Thomas, thank you for having me.
We are occasionally joined by Bruce Fitzpatrick.
Oh, that's just a body blow right on the outset. Hello.
And ever so sparingly joined by favourite guest of the pod, Harry Fitzpatrick. Harry, welcome.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for
People have
having
demanded more Harry content,
We're here to deliver.
and we're here to deliver.
And I'm here to disappoint.
You were last on the podcast when, Harry?
I think that would have been the Ely podcast. So I'm delighted and surprised that I've received another invite.
And come on, get etiquette right. Teeth on mic here, Harry. Teeth on mic. You should be kissing the phone.
Correct.
And we talked a lot about transitions, I seem to remember. Reveals. That was a big thing. Yeah.
We did, and I don't think we've seen collectively any transitions or reveals that have lived up to Ely since.
Every day I think about Ely. Like, I guarantee there's a couple of courses that I think about every single day, and Ely is one of those courses.
Really?
Yeah, definitely.
What else is on there?
Brancaster I think about most days. Blackwell every day.
Brancaster. I
That's
think
probably
about
it,
Brancaster
yeah.
a bit.
Weirdly, I think about Brancaster every day. That was nice going back a
Is
few
it because
weeks
you
ago.
thought I'd
But
stolen the
Ely I
Brancaster
think
sites?
of every single day.
I don't want to pour cold water on it because, I think Brancaster is a very special place, but you did only play there about 10 days ago, so over
No, I have
time
done for 15 years since, since
fair,
that first
okay.
time I played.
Right, okay.
Yeah, no, so no cold
Yeah,
water being poured. But that's not the reason we're podding. Harry, it's good to have you on here. I think this is going to be quite a good pod, but we should first tackle the elephant in the room.
Or the room we're in.
Well, no,
Or-
the elephant
no?
being in the room that, this is the first pod for, I think, 3 weeks because
Okay.
we had a technical issue with the podcast that we did last week.
Yeah.
Which we, by the way, we need to do the questions at the end.
Then
because
you boys were on
sent,
holiday.
We did get sent lots of questions because we said, "Oh, send in your questions," and then never released a pod. So it was a bit
Yeah.
weird.
But we can actually rig this, and we can actually play this to our favour. So who's going to win the Masters? Well, Rahm, obviously. I can't see
doubt.
anyone but Rahm. I actually thought Mickelson was going to go really well,
Yeah.
particularly sort of on the closing straight. Again,
We always knew Koepka was going to falter. He's
And
only
Reed,
used to 3
everyone
rounds.
thought Reed was going to do well. We all
no,
agreed
not
that.
us. Collectively, we all felt
agreed
Reed.
was going to do well.
But yeah, I think it would be remiss not to say a few weeks off. You guys have been away. We obviously had a technical issue last week, but we will be back podding every week
In earnest, I'd say.
in perpetuity.
We've
That's
got,
where-
we've got a few coming up that we've got scheduled to record soon. We've actually got one in the chamber that's been in the chamber for a little while, but Bruce is not done sending me the edits to that, so it's going to be.
That's actually incorrect. I've sent you the edits.
Well, you're now done sending the
Yeah,
edits.
yeah.
But
So come on.
I'll edit it again, and you'll give me more edits, so then we'll get it.
Maybe.
We've
Once
got,
we get it
we've
over
got
to
films
me,
up
done.
our sleeves. We've got our first event of the year,
Yep.
only 4 days ago.
Mhm.
Harry, did you enjoy that event?
It was stellar. It was absolutely, and I'm delighted to say that I've spent nearly 50% of my Easter weekend with the Cookie Jar. Couldn't have better company. But it was lovely to be back at Blackwell and to see it in such lovely weather with such brilliant company. So
That was our attempt
thank
of
you for
a laid back event. Would you say it was chilled and laid back?
I'd say but you can judge it based on looking at the behaviour of the Cookie Jar. And Sam seemed especially laid back on the day, I'd say.
I was like a cat on a hot tin roof in the morning because this was the first event where I think some of them have been quite curated, haven't they, in the past? So for everyone's benefit, we thought we'd do a Masters Friday party at Blackwell. I think we've mentioned a few times on here, Bobby Jones had played Blackwell the day after he won the Open at Hoylake in 1930. Obviously went off to go and find Augusta with Mackenzie, and therefore it just felt like actually it's a nice bit of history for the club. There's a nice tie-in. It's a great time of the year, and it was Good Friday as well, bank holiday, which actually I think tripped a few people up when they were planning. I think more people thought they were going to get away from work easily than out of duties with their partners, and then have a bit of lunch, play golf, and watch the golf in the evening. But there's a lot of people who hadn't been to an event because it was wide open to our newsletter. So if you're signed up to our newsletter, you will get invitations to our events. But we won't be putting them on social really. So it's first refusals on the newsletter. So there's lots of people, like unfamiliar names, and it was great seeing how people would come to an event on their own. I'd be bricking it to something like that where I didn't know anyone at a club I'd not been to, and then watching people just straight away throw themselves into it. You know, it's not like austere at all, but you know, people turn up in jacket and tie, don't know who anyone is, get a drink, meet your partners. But then you had like the real stalwarts in people like Grace or Harry or Dave Allen or
Who've been to
Sam
pretty much every
Skelton,
event.
who were kind of like working the room with precision, and sort of like all of a sudden all those nerves within, I would say, 10 minutes had gone, because you just don't want to feel like people are there.
It almost felt like the golf got in the way a bit. I feel like we could have just got there. We could have got there. We could have got the Port and Brandies in. We could have had a little chat, and then it was kind of like, right, we actually need to go play golf now. I think a lot of people were ready to just get tucked in and stay there.
But
I mean, the golf was good,
But it was a great combination as well, in that, as Sam said on the day, we had, and as you just alluded to there, Sam, quite a few people who've not been to a cookie jar event before, a lot of returning sort of members of the cookie jar kind of circle who like to come to the events, and then a fair few Blackwell members who hadn't been to any of our events before. So it was this really nice blend of people, and obviously it was nice having a Blackwell member in pretty much every group to kind of give their little take and their kind of own little neat insight into being a member of the club and the course and how it plays, and it was just a brilliant day all round, I think.
Blackwell sets up so well for that stuff though, doesn't it? You know, I know we're very lucky to play there, but because it's such a small club and it's so intimate and everything's so close together, I mean, there's a few highlights that we've got to sort of, you know, we've just got to.
We do need to talk about the Masters at some point, but let's
come on
these
to
highlights.
But you know, much like the Masters, all of a sudden you could hear, because of the intimacy of the course and the club, the roars go right through the course, don't they? So it was all of a sudden, you know, the murmurings going around the course and into the spike bar at the turn were, there's roars happening over on 11. Oh, well, someone's made a hole in one, and Tom Mortimer had canned the purest of 6 irons for his first ever hole in one.
I kind of embezzled the story a bit. Like it was getting better. Like I was in
embezzled or embellished.
Embellished. I didn't embezzle it. I didn't take the money. I embellished the story. It's okay. I'll own that one. And I drove over there, and I said, well, like, we've heard the news. What's happened? And he was like, Tom's had a hole in one. I said, well, what happened? He said, I hit a 6 iron. You know, pitched just short and released a little bit, and the hole's brilliant. I'm really chuffed. First hole in one. Oh, great. Go back to the clubhouse. What happened? Yeah, he pitched his 6 iron about 12 feet past the flag, just razzed it back in. And then by the end of the night, I was like, he had this 8 iron, just towered it through.
Never let the truth get in the way of it.
You've got to add a bit of VAT.
But we always have the MVP award, don't we? So the Saunders and Long, which is a long-standing tradition within the cookie jar events. Nick always puts up really nice sort of grooming products. The Saunders and Long stuff's excellent. It's all beautifully packaged and it's really high end. And we hand that out to the MVP, the most valuable player, the person who has the biggest impact on the day. And poor old Tom, who's blessed with a fine head of hair, these are hair grooming products, has made his first ever hole in one. And then has to watch me stand on the steps and give it to Mike Harris, the editor of Golf Monthly, who's as bold as a cue ball. For buying a bottle of champagne at the halfway house because he wanted to celebrate the first par he'd made on our 288-yard 7th hole. But it almost epitomises the events and what they're about, which I thought was lovely.
Yeah, well, there's a butterfly effect, though. As you said, you've got to give yourself credit here, Sam. Mike came in at the turn. Obviously, the spike bar halfway around at Blackwell it's a rite of passage. You have to stop there halfway through your round. Mike goes in, gets a sort of bottle of champagne for his playing partners and a few other people who are gathered in the spike bar just to say, I've had my first par. What a great day. The sun's shining. The Masters on the TV this evening. And one of the people in the bar who happened to imbibe some of that champagne was Tom Mortimer. So as you quite rightly pointed out, Sam,
would never have had it without that.
Yeah, he might not have had that hole in one if 20 minutes beforehand he hadn't have been drinking champagne. So.
And we're going to have a great film coming out from it as well because there was a playoff. Well, we are. You obviously mic'd all the guys up, so there was a playoff down 18 in front of a braying crowd, and it's just, again, Blackwell just sets up so well for this stuff.
Little shout out to Graham and the guys at TaylorMade for supporting the event with a few nice gestures because those touches definitely.
Well, the Augusta balls were sweet, weren't they?
Well, they were, yeah. I actually didn't get my sleeve balls.
How pure was the packaging?
Yeah. Yeah, the sort of azalea. Were they azalea
azalea
themed
picks.
picks, yeah.
But then the packaging all in the Augusta, I mean, like the font was about as close as you could get without getting a cease and desist from Augusta National.
Heavily serifed, wasn't it?
Yeah, like a really great... I hate fonts, don't you?
Speaking of,
do you hate fonts?
I do
I
really,
struggle
really
with
hate
fonts when I do the
I've got a
YouTube
bit of a-
artwork.
like especially like with the films and stuff. I think like sometimes I stare at fonts and go, that's just.
I don't think there's a
kind of
font
always,
I like.
but I kind of always gravitate then towards like the really boring, like the Georgia, but like Times New Roman,
Serifed,
like,
capitalised.
Yeah, but I just can't bring myself. Anyway, I hate fonts. Speaking of like things like Augusta-based material, we do need to speak about the Masters. But there was a tweet put up by Cara Banks, former guest of the pod, of some of the TV crews and stuff in, you know, where they do, is it the Butler's Cabin where they do all the speaking at the end?
The Butler Cabin.
Butler
isn't it?
Cabin.
I
But
don't
you
think it's
can see-
named
but
after
it's clearly not
where the Butlers.
like, because you
at
can see
Augusta.
the roof.
Right.
So it's got this fireplace, and then there's like the chairs where they sit or whatever. But then you can see the ceiling in this tweet, and it's all like metal, like, you know, all like the stuff
No,
of the
where they're
studio.
where you're on about, because this is where during the rain delay, you know, you had sort of like, you know, I mean, Crenshaw, great guy, obviously hugely respected in his, you know, in the world of golf architecture. But, you know, Ben Crenshaw was sort of sat there sort of regaling him with stories, and you looked around the settings, and it looked like a studio mock-up.
Yeah,
It was not. That's not Butler.
Like, no, is it?
No.
Because you can see like the roof obviously had rails where the lights affixed to them, and it was kind of like, it all looked very like, I was like, oh, that's just really taking it.
The event's great to watch, but it's almost like the narrative around the place is now starting to get a little bit carried away. You know, loads of people doing sandwich reviews from what they're getting on the ground. Keep hearing this, a tradition like none other. You know, it's all becoming a little bit, I don't know, is it getting a bit too Disney?
If I'm honest, I remember Harry and I, we were watching the coverage on Friday night when I think that was the first weather delay. Do you remember they all went berserk when that tree fell over? And it was actually quite dramatic.
rightly so, by the way.
Television, yeah. But I found myself thinking that the chat that Nick Doherty, it was quite low tech really, the chat that Nick Doherty was having with Nick Faldo about some of his Masters wins, or like his mindset as to how he approached the game, and some of the flack he got from the media for being so kind of single-minded and just really obsessed with trying to beat his competition, how that sometimes that spilled out and affected maybe relationships with players. I found that conversation really quite interesting.
That blew up on Twitter, that did.
Whereas some of the stuff that I think it was happening during the broadcast where Doherty was talking about how you'd play certain holes there, and Sky were quite proud of this visual sort of CGI representation of the holes in 3D. That just didn't really do it for me. I thought it was a bit overserviced. Or like the dissection of players' swings, where they get his Rahm's swing and we can show him in full 360 view. This is what he does. I was like, I'm not really that. I know that's quite high tech.
The Fowler thing's interesting. We're recording this on the Monday. Sunday I spent the day with my family, and they were talking about the coverage. And my sister, who knows nothing about golf, was like, and Nick Faldo's always in that tatty green jacket that doesn't fit, isn't it? And then, like, I was trying to explain to her, I was like, no, you get that for like that's the members of Augusta get the green jacket, and then Fowler's got it because he won. He won the Masters, and he's allowed to wear
They're
that
letting
jacket.
it out
And then
every
she was
year.
asking
for
some
him by a
really
few
interesting,
inches.
but she was asking some really interesting questions, like, do they only have one jacket? And I was like, well, I don't know.
No,
She's
he's
like,
got,
what
he's got
happens?
three.
No, like, but she's like, well, what happens if he puts on a bit of weight? I was like, well, I don't know, maybe.
Well,
So
let it
maybe they
out
retail
there.
it. Do they make him a new jacket? I don't know.
Well, some of them, if you look at like the
Interesting
Seve one
questions.
from, they showed some nice pictures of Seve, obviously 1883, I think it was, wasn't it? I might have butchered that.
1883.
I wouldn't think it's
80 and 83, I think, were the years
Okay,
he might
yeah.
have won. And you look at the lapel on the jacket they were handing out then, it's totally different. It's like this sort of, really weird sort of like early 80s blazer, but the lapel sort of just starts coming in from
different
like
style,
the
yeah.
nipple line, and you're like, that's an absolutely
Wasn't
atrocious
there
shaped
some story
jacket
like?
now.
Wasn't there some story like
But-
they had a generic jacket made for the winner? Like, this is like, when Tiger won his first and he put it on, it was like absolutely enormous on him because he was like,
well, it was, wasn't it? It was huge. You see it. But I think more than anything is like there's that spell of. I mean, I don't know, Harry. I don't know what your thoughts are, but like I look at the social media and stuff, and it was always like really it's really cool, and it's like, oh my God, they just do everything brilliantly, and they do. But has it got to the point where it's so good that it's almost become
overserviced?
Yeah.
Well, I think there are a few clues to that. One of which would be, I think it's a basket called A Taste of the Masters. I don't know if you chaps have seen this, which is a sort of Augusta themed hamper that you can buy online. Which I think, you buy sort of a packet of the pimento cheese, and you sort of you make your own whatever it is grilled cheese sandwich. But I think it comes in at some eye-watering price point of about $175. And if you looked at the actual ingredients, it's very difficult to see beyond the fact that this is just a branding exercise.
Isn't
But
one of the things at the Masters that it's supposed to be really...
It is. It's very
value.
reasonable. So I think the merchandising to the people who are not supporting but want to get into the spirit.
They're
of
either selling like $7 or $70 million worth of merchandise in that tent. Like there's a massive queue to get in, and they always have this thing that people talk about, don't they? Where you buy the merch, and then there's like a FedEx table there, so you take it over, you give them your address, and they'll just FedEx it to your house, and it's there like the next day.
So you're not carrying it around.
So I saw some of the stuff that I think Tom Coyne had bought a load of stuff when he was there, because he'd put a little reel up because he got home and all of his stuff had arrived. And some of it I was like, this is absolute tat. Like there's just so much stuff. And I've seen loads of pictures of stuff online where I'm like, you can have too much of a good thing.
I would actually, I'm going to push back a little bit. Not that it's not tat. And I'm really sorry to the whole golfing community, but I'd say most pro shops have tat. It's really hard to go.
I'm going to
I'm
critique the whole idea of tat though, which is that what you and I find to be tat isn't actually the case for in the eyes of a lot of other people. That's what they want.
No, I'm not
so
being told.
how do you cater for a
wide
variety of tastes? Like some people want a very, very discreet little Augusta National logo.
Completely agree.
A nice dark green kind of quarter zip
I think it says more about my taste than anything else.
I just can't believe it's just what more than anything
range,
so commercial. Like seeing there's obviously so much stuff.
Coasters,
Cup
holders.
That's what I mean. Like
pencils.
Having said that, so Sam had a real go at me the other day. He was really angry at me because we'd been to Brancaster and he'd left some stuff that he'd bought in my car, and he accused me of stealing the socks he'd purchased.
I bought a pair.
Hang on.
But when you think about it every day, you're constantly reminded of these
so
issues.
I'm wearing these Brancaster socks, and he started attacking me, saying how I've stolen his socks, and he left these things in my house. I was like, mate, that bag is still in my garage, it's untouched. Anyway, I delivered that to him this morning because I was like, okay.
Well, the reason being, I bought a pair of
Brancaster playing cards
logo. I thought that was cool because I'm really happy with my lip balm from Moortown, and I bought some. I mean, it's dreadful sun cream, but it's Rye logoed sun cream, which I thought was quite neat.
Factor one.
So when I saw the logoed playing cards, I was like, I've got to get those.
Okay, so just to circle back here to your initial point about the Tom Coyne post, presumably you wouldn't think that Augusta National playing cards, lip balm, and the sun cream isn't tat and isn't excessive.
I think it's more what they emblazon on it with the slogan. All I'm saying is, it's like, oh my God, it was like looking at this shoe, it was like you realise just how big a commercial this has got. And like you say, I'm not attacking the Masters, but it's almost like there's so much rhetoric around the event now that it's got to the point where...
I think it's the same absolutely everywhere. I think the Open, we were all at the Open last year.
Yeah, everything's led to this last year.
Yeah, but I think the Masters is like...
Where does it go next year now?
yeah.
No one else this is the way down.
Yeah. But we're not short on superlatives.
Quite right. But I think the Masters has been like the ultimate example of the power of a brand in golf, and hearing from a lot of non-golfers about we're going to sit down and watch the Masters this weekend. That's actually quite interesting. I don't really hear you say that about the US Open. You certainly don't hear about a run-of-the-mill PGA Tour event or a live event.
It's amazing how well they do it. But things like the app, I think, and it's unreal.
Really
one
good.
event and the quality.
Yeah, they've really curated it well, though, haven't they? If you look at dare I say, even like that advertising coverage. I can't really speak to the main audience or the main market here being in America, because I know that is something that is plagued with a lot more advertising than UK golf coverage. But even in the UK with Sky, like the number of adverts and the ad breaks are more limited, and they're kind of they're more heavily focused on this partnership with Rolex or whatever in the tradition of the Masters. So they've clearly, the Masters have clearly gone about like creating this image in a very particular way.
What I would say, what you said, because my sister, I said that we were having that conversation, says the same thing. She'll watch the Masters, but pretty much nothing else, maybe the Open. I actually think this isn't. We shouldn't really go here on this podcast because it's kind of so off topic, but it's worth talking about because we're in Britain. No, I think this is a hang up from it used to be on terrestrial television. The Masters used to be on BBC, so did the Open. And my sister was like, "Oh yeah, I like watching the Masters. I haven't really been able to watch much this year. You know, if I'm because she doesn't have Sky. She's like, oh yeah, so I used my dad's login and watched a little bit with her husband. But I actually think the loss of it on terrestrial television in Britain will probably have a longer impact further down the line when they're not like they don't have so much access to people that are not interested in golf watching the golf.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the viewing numbers and where those sort of stack up with, because obviously it's paid for and stuff. But I mean, years and years ago, people literally coverage started on the back nine, didn't it? No one ever saw what the front nine looked like.
Oh,
you look at that. So I don't know. I mean,
but
look,
that app is
when I
good
say
though,
that what they do around the event, it is amazing what an unlimited budget will do for you in this game. In terms of the delivery of the app, the way they can provide the coverage, the shots. The quality of the camera work, the fan experience, it is unbelievable. It's almost got to a level where it's almost unattainably good.
But I think they have the advantage that they are the first major. They can just go bonkers because everyone's so excited. There's a little bit of a hang up by the time it gets to the Open. I think everyone's like, okay, we've had a few of these now. We've had a few majors. There's not quite the excitement there is for the Masters.
No, I don't know if it's that. I think it's more about the Masters is the only event where it's played at the same course, same club every year, and so it's just like
pins.
the same pins, and there's just this familiarity that you develop as a viewer, which you don't get even somewhere like St Andrews.
Yeah, like 16, you're watching it land, and you're like, oh no, he's too far left there. That's going to just roll back down and miss it on that side. And that's quite nice and engaging. Speaking of the course, because I think I want to, obviously a big thing with the budget this year. Lengthening the 13th hole. How did that sit with you, Harry?
Well, I think that it was interesting, also because of the weather, and not just 13, which I'll come back to. But I think a lot of the other holes, with the colder temperatures and some of the wind, seeing the difference in yardage that some of the pros are hitting it on 18, for instance. I don't know if you saw the yardages
on that third round.
So I think Rahm's first round, I think he hit a drive up there something like 310, or maybe somewhere between 300 310, and then I think on that windy round he probably got it out there about 240 245.
I saw it.
And you're seeing a lot of pros hitting woods into par fours and stuff, and I suppose that's an interesting conversation topic now for like the rollback debate. But you sort of then you see it on 13 where it's forced because the hole has been adapted to encourage that kind of thing. And I don't know, I think obviously the job that they have done there is incredible, and actually if you saw the rear view, because of the perspective and the sort of, I guess the camera work is actually difficult, and to see that there is that much of a difference when you're sitting on the other side of a TV screen. But clearly it was having a big impact on who was going for it. I mean, you got to hit a shot like Rahm did in the last round to really chase one round that corner.
But
actually,
and he had a 6-iron, which is unbelievable.
But they showed it on the track. He hit the best drive of the final round.
But actually, it in my opinion, that brought 13 back to being what Bobby Jones and Mackenzie. Bobby Jones famously said, "You should only be able to go for a par 5 if you've earned the right to do it." You know.
Yeah, they said it. Like it should be a momentous decision.
Yeah, that was one of his design philosophies. So if he's not. I think loads of people hit okay drives and laid up, and that's absolutely fine. Well, that's what it should be about. Or hit okay drives and then took the risk
and bailed out left quite often.
It was way more multi-dimensional from being 35 yards younger.
I think it was better.
Whereas it was a no decision last year. I think we can all agree on it. And then the weather got cold and the ball wasn't going far, and the ground got really soft in round 2 or 3 or whatever. And then lots more people couldn't get up. Did it make any worse? No. But when it was just like a fait accompli that you were going to be hitting a 6 or a 7 iron into it, lost it.
But Rahm's drive down that final round was ballsy. To turn around that corner.
You've got to think there was a little bit more shape on that than probably intended.
Do you think? Yeah, I thought that was squeaky. It looked.
Yeah. Because that was but that's what it's about, isn't it? Like he took a risk at probably the most pivotal time of that round. Perhaps you say he pulled it a bit, maybe with a bit more turn than he wanted, but he had been working on that shape, and you can see all week he'd been trying drawing.
I think that was
a
one of the
little
sort
bit.
of commentators' favourite topics, wasn't it? The Rahm's draw tee shots. It was hard to watch the sort of 2 or 3 hole stretch of Rahm without them sort of going in on the
They
work
love
he'd done. But
talking
it's
about
incredible.
Rahm moving it
You know,
left to right, don't they? They are obsessed
Well, that's
with talking
McGinley.
about
Yeah. Again, not his natural shape, but he's worked hard on this. It's like,
Like if
you
you'd
mentioned this
never
5
watched
times
golf,
already.
like you would be like, God, this is really important stuff. What direction you move the ball? And it's like, no, it's completely relevant.
Okay,
for
so
that majority.
I'm gonna throw out there. Like I think I've said this on the pod before. I'm not Rahm's biggest fan in the world because like I don't like the way that like in the Players a couple of years back when he threw that massive tantrum at his caddy and all that stuff, and I feel like he's just a bit too angry for me as a person. But
Bit
what
petulant.
was really impressive around this week, I thought, certainly on Sunday, was he just looked like completely calm, completely in control. And even after the double on one on day one, it wasn't like
Unfazed.
I'm going to snap the putter over my knee. He's like, all right, okay, we'll just go and shoot 9 under for the rest of the round. It's fine.
Scheffler had a 4 jig as well, didn't he, last year when he won? It's a nut stat that, and then
Interesting symmetry, yeah.
The winner of last year's Masters ended with a 4-putt, and the winner of this year's started
Opened
with a
it,
4-putt. Yeah.
crazy.
He does blow very hot and cold, though, Rahm, like emotionally.
But he seemed calm this week,
Yeah.
didn't he?
But it's quite interesting because he's made out to be, I guess they're all made out to be these sort of machines. Koepka, who's arguably been the sort of alpha male of the golf world, 2017, 18, 19, and this guy just wasn't fazed by pressure. He looked fairly vulnerable despite being healthy and going through a great form. Obviously, he's won a couple of events in quick succession on the Live Tour. He, cracked a little bit and didn't look his normal cool self yesterday afternoon. Then even Rahm, he did look pretty composed in the main, but there was still a couple of putts he hit. I think it was the putt he hit on 7 where he's just shoveled this thing low and left. It's not got to the hole
Didn't look
from
like
8
there
feet.
were some of them that were
Which
weak.
is it's nice to see that because we all go through that on a daily basis when we play the game.
I thought it
on
was a
weekly
good case
basis.
study for the Netflix thing as well,
Yeah.
because seeing the vulnerability of Brooks in that, which was tough watching because I actually really like watching Koepka play golf. Loads of people hate him. I really like him because I just like the way he sort of prowls around the golf ball with a presence, and there's an arrogance, and it's quite nice to watch that. I don't know, for whatever reason I quite like it. And then when you then add in how fragile he's clearly feeling about his golf, and the fact that he's quite honest in saying, I'd have probably looked at Live differently if my body wasn't completely broken when we made the decision a year ago. Then getting himself there and then watching him, I was actually pulling for Koepka, really. Obviously, the Live thing is stuff that we're going to bridge into a little bit. But, Rahm, I think it's the problem, isn't it? If you're Scheffler, Rahm, top of the pack, it's quite hard for you to pull for them because you're so used to seeing these guys win. But, I don't know.
I guess part of that, Sam, was that wanting to see some drama because we're so used to seeing those tussles, the sort of last 6 or 7 holes at Augusta. You just wanted a bit of excitement. Because I found myself thinking the same when Koepka, he struggled with his driver all day, but then he started to find a bit of form coming in.
I mean,
you just wanted that bit of drama.
You see that?
I know, but that was
obviously it was so
he
much
was
scar
hating
tissue for the
that
morning.
misses.
Hit it 297.
Yeah, okay, that's still.
I mean,
just
it was-
downhill,
with a
downwind,
Healy
but-
squirty strike.
I was like,
Still.
what on earth is he doing with the iron? I almost felt I was like, arrogant little prick. Yeah, of course he deserves that. And then the stat came up. It was like 222 to hole, 297 drive. I was like, what?
Yeah.
I threw a load of money at
Like-
Cantlay though, and this was the biggest mistake with big events like this. I put money on Cantlay, which was at one point, look, he was well in it going into that final round. And then I sat there and just thought, God, I really hope this guy wins because I'm going to have to sit here and support Patrick Cantlay for the entire last round. And it really didn't. I was like, why have I put money on someone that I really can't pull
It's
for?
funny. I mean, just to kind of dart back quickly to the effect of the Masters on the kind of wider world and how it is just part of the wider public consciousness in the way that many other golf events aren't. It's funny how many sweepstakes and things like that come around as well. I mean, I don't really bet on golf very much week to week, but got involved with a sweepstake this year and was at the top of a leaderboard of 90 people. I was in second place, but because these sweepstakes done quite well, and then you've got to pick 2 from the top 10, 1 from the top 20, 1 from 20 to 30, whatever, and you have 8 guys, and then it's quite spread out. There's obviously, it can change really quickly because you've got a cumulative score of 8 people rather than just 1 or 2 guys who might be in the mix. So
yeah, interestingly, I put a couple of quid on.
And you're abhorred by gambling, I thought.
Yeah, but this is only a couple of quid on
like morally abhorred.
They did like golf. I'm not a gambler, which is like I fell into it the way you did, like, and I am morally abhorred to gambling, but it's
Yeah,
but
no,
it's-
we're not going down. No,
we're not doing this. No, I know.
Come on.
but like on a deeper level, I
Abhorred
absolutely
to
despise gambling. Obviously, I'm just a gigantic hypocrite.
But you're giving some airtime to it now.
But I did it like I had a couple of quid on Hovland, so that was upsetting that he kind of fell away the way he did. But I also had like a few quid on golf by category, so you could do like best English golfer or best amateur. One of them was best live golfer, and I put a couple of quid on a few, and Mickelson going on a Sunday tears just destroyed.
Yeah, no one saw that coming
because I had Reed and Koepka. Which would have come in like
Tom's
both
really
each
cut
way.
up about it. The reason we were late for getting here, and we'll come on to where we're recording shortly, was because we had to stop off at 3 service stations on the way down. He's had been loading the fruities on the way down and stuff.
Just
There's a problem. There's a
Mickelson's tear.
thing, and we're starting to see why he's abhorred by it. You touched on Liv. We are recording this podcast in Runnymede, which feels slightly apropos to the Liv PGA saga. Is there some sort of segue we can draw from that? Bruce, what's the significance of Runnymede?
Oh, bloody hell.
This is GCSE history. You're closest to GCSE.
I didn't even
level.
think I did it for GCSE. I'm going back to like
12,
when I was
15.
8 or 9. Runnymede. Magna Carta.
What's the Magna Carta?
Don't know if I've got much beyond that. Was this the agreement between King John and a few like local or I don't know significant barons?
I don't know.
About-
But I really like the fact that we're pretending.
I think it enshrines some
payments.
human rights in
Well,
law
yeah,
and
I
stuff.
don't know. You got
And
always
that's not the segue into Liv. The segue is all around unification of two things. It's a dreadful segue. It was just more the fact that we're sat where the Magna Carta was signed today, recording this podcast,
which is quite cool.
Which is absolutely. Except we're in quite a sort of glossy conferencing suite.
From the
rather
worst
than-
segue ever to live golf.
But more to the point of actually you had this massive division of PGA, Liv. They'd obviously given the broadcasters like very, very clear direction on you are not going to just keep peddling Liv PGA jargon on that. And actually, I thought it was a way better viewing experience because of that.
Yeah,
it was,
I would also-
they were just talking
I would also add to that
unbiased about the players.
the players have said some really quite nasty things about each other. And then they were all peddling. So I think they've probably had similar instruction because then they were all peddling this things like, oh yeah, I turned up on the range and it was like, oh, it's like I hadn't seen you in a few months. I didn't really think about what I'm doing. It's like it's complete bullshit.
Those
We've
boys all
always
play
been
at
calling you to
medalists
pieces
together.
for months,
Yeah.
and people have been actually physically like naming people and saying, oh, this person's this bad, this person's bad, and then they all pretended like everything was hunky dory.
I don't know. I think you can have it both ways, though. Really, in that there's clearly some specific relationships that are quite fractious at the moment. Like Reed and Rory, I'm sure they weren't saying, "Hey, great to see you on the range," Wednesday morning or whatever. But I think probably by and large, a lot of the Liv PGA Tour divide is overblown. Cam Smith probably summed it up best. He doesn't seem to have come in for much criticism over the last few months from individual PGA Tour players in the way that Patrick Reed has.
Yeah,
Not unsurprising because, as far as I can tell, Cam Smith isn't suing a handful of people. But it was nice to see that there was just a slightly different spin on it because I do think that the media has. I'm sure we're part of it, but the mainstream media has fueled this division.
I think, like Sam said, I think the product being golf was better for it. And it was nice to see those players back together again.
And it would have been a way worse major if the Liv guys couldn't have played in it. When you look at that, that's a resounding success for Liv.
3 of the top 6.
Yeah,
3 in the top 6. Yeah, it's top 4 if you're looking on the leaderboard because 3 of them were tied 4th. But I think it's a massive win for Liv. Yeah, really, in terms of. I think if they'd had a series of poor majors, you're really going to. It's going to find hard to sell that product when you're trying to go to wherever it is that you're going to go and play your golf. But I think Greg Norman would have been like licking his chops at that.
That's if you were behind that. That's the. I mean, there's obviously a few that blew out, just people like Shambo, etc. But then players like Rory as well. You going in, you'd have taken that if you were Greg Norman or whoever, wouldn't you? You'd be like, yeah, that's a win. I would take that.
Yeah, I think It was quite interesting. We touched on it a little bit earlier. Like Koepka obviously feels like his body is now in a great place. He's healthy, and his game is good, and he's probably a very different person to the guy that we saw on our screens in full swing, which was filmed the beginning of last year.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking there was some murmurings that he almost admitted this week or a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, he said he would have looked at it differently. He still said, but I'm still happy. I mean, anecdotally, I've read things that said that he's looking at...
He wants to get out.
What does it cost to get out of my live contract? But, you know, he definitely said that... They keep using this term healthy, don't they, rather than fitness or whatever. It's like, his health was better. He would have probably looked at it differently.
Speaking of fitness and health, Phil Mickelson. I mean, he looks like a different person, but how entertaining was that round of golf from him yesterday?
He looks like a person that's gone through a lot of stress. Do you not think? He
looked like he'd had an uphill paper round, didn't he?
There's like...
He did. Do you not think? He looked...
You know,
I agree with Mills. He looked...
when some people get like...
shell-shocked.
When, like, some people you see and you haven't seen them in a while and they've lost weight and you're like, ooh, Christ, you look good. And there's some people that like have lost weight because they've been ill and you're like, ooh, you okay? I thought Phil Mickelson looked like... He was like, I would have been saying...
I don't know, to generalise it, I do think they say that if you're slightly larger and you're a little heavier, you tend to look a bit younger. I don't know whether he's obviously north of 50 and he's had a big weight loss north of 50. Is that not just sort of...
Definitely. Whereas Larry only looks like 18, doesn't he?
But it definitely
but I think
didn't affect his game, did it?
No, but it was absolutely remarkable to think at the age of 52 or whatever, to be able to compete at that level is utterly outstanding.
Lowest.
Because the course was playing long as well. It wasn't like he was playing a baked out St Andrews in the Open Championship where it was more of an equaliser.
And there wasn't all the stinky chat, There wasn't all the nasty bombs and all that stuff. He was very...
I thought he was quite humble in his interview afterwards with Sarah Sturck.
I didn't catch that interview. You watched it.
Yeah, he pretty directly responded to her comments around the fact he'd set a record for over 50s in the Masters, and just said that's not how he thinks of himself. He's always had quite a stern mindset when it comes to him as a competitor, but he's looking at this now that his game is in a brilliant spot and he can compete with the best in the world, which is quite exciting actually. You look at the rest of the year, we all looked at that PGA win of his and thought, okay, what a great last hurrah for Phil, but he's absolutely got the mindset that he's still up there competing. And actually yesterday's round was an absurd example of that.
When you think, I did actually have a little thought about this, and I'm not sure I actually took my thoughts through to a conclusion, because perhaps it's not a fair comparison, but when you consider that Phil has lived under the shadow of Tiger for an entire career, and then you see kind of Tiger withdrawing, really, quite hard to watch, because you almost think, are you now damaging your reputation?
It's very hard.
And this man who's lived in the shadow of Tiger, and everyone's kind of always viewed Phil through the lens of Tiger, is now, I don't want to say that outperforming, because you just don't know what Tiger would be doing now. But now he's like still going,
if Tiger had anything like Phil's body, I mean, it'd be quite scary. It was very hard watching that stuff, wasn't it?
There's a marked difference, I think, from a health standpoint. Yeah, it's
of course
tough
because of everything that's gone on.
But I guess if you wanted to get really philosophical, like the relentless or the brutal physical training and mental training regime that Tiger put himself through in his prime years, it certainly damaged his body and made him much more susceptible to injury, but it was probably a necessary ingredient in him becoming the kind of steely, unbelievable competitor that he was for all those years. I don't know whether you could have had one without the other, whereas Mickelson has always been seen as a bit more laid back and kind of happy-go-lucky. Tiger's always been driven, and it is sad to see that at this moment in time there's quite a marked difference in how they appear physically, healthily on a golf course.
He kind of has to as well.
Yeah.
He just keeps blowing all of his cash, Phil, as well. So he's
nothing like a wild bit of conjecture on the Jar podcast.
No, I'm joking.
Sam was out in Vegas actually last week.
Well, you speak to the rumour mill, don't you? But but all jokes aside, it looked like he came into the Masters well and truly humbled by the last 12, 18 months activities, and for him to just answer the critics on the golf course, I thought was a pretty remarkable accomplishment.
Yeah, and like you say, in his post round interview, he was very very humble about, and there were the references to live in there, but they were subtle and they were respectful.
Absolutely.
And after a 65, it's quite easy to stand up and to be a bit more direct with your comments.
No, and that's why I think the whole
combative.
thing around it felt like it was a bit of a watershed moment where some of that stuff had matured a little bit. I think it'd be right to mention couples as well.
I'm not
Also
quite done on
absurd.
I'm not quite done on Tiger. Just
On Tiger.
Just for a short moment before we move on to couples, because that would be the right thing to talk about. My aforementioned sister, who doesn't watch golf but watches it occasionally, came up with a thing where she said, I was explaining that you've been through this car crash, you can't walk, and she was like, "Why doesn't he just use a buggy?" And I kind of was trying to explain it to her that it's more of its pride than anything else, because I think I dare say
It's good enough for John
Tiger
Daly.
Woods said to any tournament on the planet, "I'll play as long as I have a buggy," they'd bend over backwards to do it because of the revenue that would bring with it. And actually, he'd be, he may be competitive if he could whiz around a golf course.
I'm
and
not sure about
just hit
that.
shots.
No, people think he would be, Sam, actually.
Really?
Again, you've
Really?
got to take this stuff with a pinch of salt or maybe a barrel of salt. Was it Fred Couples or someone else who said he shot like a 65 or a 63 on the Tuesday or the Wednesday round? By all accounts, he is certainly not struggling with hitting golf shots. He's adapted his body and his swing to so many times before, and he can make that work. He does not look well in terms of walking around a golf course. Like his feet and his ankles do look.
That
like
sort of
a
bunker
lot
shot that he hit
difficulty.
on 18, maybe on the first round or second round,
Yeah,
where he had 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's just like,
Looked quite
it did
hairy,
look like it was
didn't
going to keel over.
There doesn't look like he's got much in the way of an ankle or a lower leg. Like you can almost see the trouser is kind of.
Well, there's a
the
photo
wind.
online, isn't there? It genuinely looks like he's been in a shark attack. And I think a lot of people said that, I think he said it himself, but it's often difficult to know where it turns into hyperbole. But the surgeons kind of were presented with something that only loosely resembled a lower leg
You
and
can see
ankle.
he's always got
Well,
like
after
he
that
was
car
on with the
accident.
shorts
So
and
the
stuff
fact that
because
he's
it's
still
very
walking
sad.
around is probably a miracle. But the adaptations he's made to his swing are amazing. I mean, he basically only has upper body now.
Yeah.
And he's still ripping it. And
At Riv, he was like 180 ball speed, wasn't
yeah,
He hits it so far, but it is very upper body dominant. There's like quite a lot of shoulder in that. And
he? Is that like, I don't look at the swing the way that you boys look at the swing. Is that vastly different from, say, Tiger 10 years ago?
yeah, I think so. I mean, again, he's always moved his swing around a little bit. He's moved it around actually quite a lot, I would say.
He never
over
swung
his
it like Sam Bennett.
30-year career. There were times where he looked closer to Sam Bennett.
Yeah, it was always like, but it, like that.
Quite a lot of side bend and quite a sort of exacting move.
But the
from a
generation of
physical
players like
standpoint.
Hovland
Yeah.
and Bennett that are coming through that
Yeah.
are way more
Neiman's the worst, isn't he?
athletic.
Right.
Yeah, Neiman, another great example. Like
Yeah.
He looks like a half-open suitcase when he's hitting the golf, doesn't he?
the way I feel today, that's like how I feel like I'm swinging the club. Maybe that's because that's how I am.
Freddie
Yeah.
Couples, that was some showing that, wasn't it?
Well, I wanted to mention it just
It's
purely
quite
because
nice.
I can't believe at the age of 63 the guy's again able to just go out and compete at that
But
level
it's quite nice, like, to back
without
it
a
up.
golf glove on, with tempo that looks like him. He looks like he's barely going at the golf ball. I mean, tempo is so deceptive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you not think? Like, you watch
But
him.
he's been quite vocal in the media recently, running his mouth against a lot of players.
Mm.
And I think he was. I know he's a past champion. He doesn't need to prove anything to anybody. He truly doesn't. But it's good to back it up a little bit, and come out and have a couple of really good rounds and make the cut.
Definitely. But what I find amazing with it is throughout his whole career, it's one that's, tempo is just everything with him, isn't it? It's so
Languid
slow,
and
so-
free.
and it never looks like it's moving, but it bloody well is, that club somewhere. There must be like a slither or impact when all of a sudden it just gets to the right speed. It's sneaky
It's
good.
almost like you sometimes talk about, I forget what you call it. I'm going to say something like the elephant trunk now or something like that Rory used to have.
We just have it, yeah.
It's almost like that. Like it's
we
the whip
need
at the
to
bottom.
really caveat that because that sounds like some terrible innuendo.
Is this when you're in the locker room with him somewhere?
So you can elaborate.
Yeah,
on
like
that
the
if you
idea if elephant's trying to hit something with its trunk, it obviously like would move its head in one way, and then while the trunk's still swinging, it would like kind of start. It's just like creating like a whip like effect.
I think he must have
Yeah.
something.
Would have
similar
sounded a
to
lot. Would it have sounded better if you said the whip that Rory has? Yeah, I don't know if that would have been less sort of.
Speaking of legends,
Shane Lowry.
Kokrak.
Oh, okay.
Did you see this thing about the news? Kokrak and Sandy Lyle. Let the boys play.
That did feel like a bit of an own goal from the Masters. For everything else that was very, very well managed, and as we've become accustomed to just seeing utter perfection and kind of seamless presentation of the golf course and the media coverage, and they seem to do everything well. I mean, the fact they had sub-air on perhaps the whole
you can hear it,
golf
can't you?
course, and they just dry it out, and we can
Unreal
have a
how
normal
that course
Sunday.
recovered
Amazing.
for the Saturday.
The Sandy Lyle incident,
Blackwell.
yeah, that felt like a bit of an own goal.
Yeah, because
What I don't follow because I want to illuminate, mate.
So Kokrak was in the same group as him.
Sandy
And he
Lyle.
just wrote an article on Friday. So he just wrote an article.
We need to set the context about this with being Sandy Lyle's last.
Yeah.
Masters.
So it's obviously Sandy Lyle and Larry Mize both. This is the last one.
I didn't know about Mize, but probably yes. Yeah, certainly with Lyle.
But
both of them.
Lyle's obviously said he's retiring from all competitive golf, and this was going to be it. He played with Kokrak. They got to the final green, and the tree fell down. And he was on the final green, and he had 8 foot, 12
8 foot for par. He was already 19 over par. He's missing the cut. This is his last Masters.
With all the supporters. Sorry. Oh, what a faux pas.
You'll never get media creds there calling them that.
All the patrons there. Wow.
It's not even spectators; it's supporters.
God,
I think it is a bloody football match.
It really bothers me.
179 episodes into a
Watching
golf
too much
podcast.
Live.
I know.
Rooting for Mickelson's
He's
high
not been
fly.
doing enough podcasts, is what he's not been doing.
But I kind of meant all Sandy Lyle supporters. Obviously, they're patrons, but they're people that wanted him just to give him the ability to clap him off, to cheer his last ever Masters. And obviously, health and safety, took over, considering that guy in the umbrella nearly got completely wiped out by a pine tree. They've just stopped all golf. So he's got 8 foot for par to walk off, and that's it. Everyone cheer him. They obviously cancel. He has to go back at 7 a.m. in the pin, knock this 8 foot putt in, and walk off to basically nobody there.
Mm.
So that was what Kokrak was basically arguing, that the own goal was, the championship committee, the Masters, should have just been like, yeah, go on, just putt that out. You're on 18.
What I will, in the defence of the Masters, though, can you imagine being on the ground as a tournament organiser that week? For them, that must have felt totally adequate. I bet that really was
3 trees falling
Well, when
down?
you get sort of 3 or 4 days. I mean, they get a lot of rain, but never quite like that. And if there's lightning, it's off they come and they go back out. That Friday, tree coming down. It's okay, this
3 of them. 3.
Yeah,
There were 3 trees.
What's odd about those trees?
But then,
the trees usually have roots. Do you see that? When they fell down,
shallow. I think they move them around, though, don't they?
Do you think that's what it is?
I think some of them, yeah. I think I heard on the No Laying Up podcast or something, they were I wouldn't be surprised if the next morning they've put one back in its place or something. Quite amusing. But I think they move them around. That's the extent to which it's kind of manicured and perfected. And therefore it wouldn't be surprising that maybe it hasn't hit full root. It seemed mental that a tree of that size could blow down in what looked like a fairly benign wind, to be honest.
We've had a tree come down at Blackwell not so long ago. The one on the 4th, one up by the green.
It takes 6 months before we clear it up.
Well, it does take 6 months to clear up. But it came
Character
down.
though, Sam. It's
I love
character.
It came down, and I went to go have a look at it, and this thing had come down, and the roots were a metre wide, and they'd shear,
Yeah.
and you could see
More
it.
shallow on
shear.
certain
And it was
types of
what
things,
a
though.
force to get that tree down, to shear these roots in half. But this tree that came down, you could see on the telecast, is they had these little they looked like the roots of a blade of grass.
Shallow. Yeah, very shallow.
It was very thin, very small, and it was it's just a miracle that thing had come down. What was also particularly strange, we talked about it because we were at our event, and there was lots of us there all together, that Augusta controlled the narrative so strongly around everything to do with the Masters. The fact it was just replayed over and over on TV of that guy nearly getting crunched. There's one guy...
But when he wasn't crunched, they were I think you can just have at it, play it. It's quite dramatic TV.
Yeah,
That could have been...
I'm surprised they didn't
I'm quite surprised they didn't... I mean, maybe they did, but a full survey of the integrity of all the trees that were there then, because there's a bloody lot of them. And if that can happen once, it can happen again, particularly with strong winds, wasn't it, on Sunday?
When you get one going, I guess it's quite common that it will take others with it once it's got that momentum. That's
Seemed
exactly
to
what
fall in
happened.
slow-mo,
2 more
didn't it?
came with it. Yeah. It's
When
hard
you
to
look
make
at-
out. Obviously, there's a guy with the umbrella. I don't know whether he's because obviously you've got 2 gaps in the middle of like the middle tree and then the right tree and the left tree. I didn't know, like, presumably you managed to just get out of the way of all of them, but that would have been quite high drama, I imagine, if you're on the ground.
Tree drama.
Bringing it
Yeah.
back to Blackwell though for a second.
Couple of more things to talk about. Two things that tie in together. Rory McIlroy
I knew he was going to get a mention. He's a favourite of the pod, isn't he? So yeah.
and the on-course interview.
Oh,
Yeah.
Now, I think they're different things. It's interesting to talk about both of those things independently, but the fact that he did one was even weirder. Harry, fire.
Well, given his position with the PGA Tour and his role and the way that he's been very vocal and in support of the PGA Tour, I think it almost seemed like he felt he had a responsibility to champion their efforts to make coverage of golf more interesting and just deliver some more content. I was really surprised that Augusta were happy with that. And I was also really surprised that Rory would agree to it in the context of the fact that it is the Masters, and we all know what Rory's history with the Masters and what it means to him. And I also think there's an interesting dynamic with golf where what they're trying to do with Full Swing and what Drive to Survive managed to achieve. Part of the appeal of golf coverage to me is that you really don't know what the players are thinking at any one moment. You're kind of guessing. You're sort of trying to hear what the caddy's saying to the player, but you're not really sure. And a lot of the feedback you're getting is sort of the visual element of their body language and their facial expressions. But then they come off the course and you hear their post-round interview, and then you kind of understand, okay, well, what was going through your mind at this moment or that moment. So to have AirPods in, walking up the fairway, having to tell them that I've just misclubbed that, it's come up a little bit short, and now the putt shouldn't be too bad there because it's up the slope. It's like, did that really add much? All you've really said is the result, and we don't really get much more of an insight, and it almost cheapens the experience for me. And that's my view.
Yeah,
I don't know what you
totally agree.
I think it falls into the camp of over-servicing, like that. The term we mentioned earlier. I mean, to just quickly pick up your point, he takes the AirPod out, so he has it in, talks through what he's seeing, blah, 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 takes it out, hits the shot, then puts it back in.
Right, okay.
It's still
But either way, it's a lot of availability when you're in
Yeah.
Do you think it's Rory McIlroy's attempt?
I'd be way
to
more interested in seeing like Woodland
pressure?
and Kepka's caddy mocked up. That'd be much more interesting.
I think it's his attempt. I think it's his attempt to make this, in his own mind, more of a regular run-of-the-mill PGA Tour event, which he has no problem winning and closing out. And he's just like, I'm just going to treat it more like any other PGA Tour event. It's like, okay, that's fine, but it's not though, is it? And so, why be part of the pilot? I agree with you, Harry. Like, I don't think it's something that adds a great amount of value to the coverage of the Masters. Like, you get enough from on-course reporters who are up there, who are close by, microphones that pick up a player-caddy conversation. I don't need to hear what the player's thinking there and then over each shot.
I think a much better product would be, I don't think it'd be difficult to enforce, perhaps difficult to enforce in the Masters, but if they just enforce every player, every caddy is mic'd, and we might dip in and out of your conversations, we're never going to stitch you up, but take away the formality from it, because we do all want to hear the conversations, we do all want to hear their thought process, of what they're going to do. But that kind of artificial, I'll tell you what I'm doing, it just looked weird. And a fair play to Rory, he parred the ninth when he was walking up it in round one. It just it was just shocking. Like, the whole thing was shocking.
I'm just not sure. It's like, ultimately what's happened. Well, someone said, well, it'd be better if we can get even closer insight to it, because that's going to be a good thing. So it's like, you're spot on, I think, Harry. Is that made it any more interesting? No. Then what comes off the back of it? Well, then that becomes a subject point for the analysis within the tournament and the context of the Masters itself. Is that interesting again? I'm not sure it is.
I got more insight and interest out of Faldo's assessment of Rory's game. I mean, this feels like just a ringing endorsement of Nick Faldo's participation in the Masters coverage. But by and large, I found him to be
he was actually
really
right on
interesting.
Sky. I'm not a big fan of his generally on the punditry,
on CBC or CBS. But when there was this sort of dissection of Rory's struggles, and he was saying, I think he's trying to hit a few hold-up fades off some of these notoriously slopey lies around Augusta, and he's had a few go left on him, and like you can just see that he's struggling with the short irons, and that's creepy. And I was like, oh, okay, that's something like I wouldn't have gleaned otherwise. Like, I've not been there and played it. I don't know Rory's game, and obviously don't spend that much time kind of analysing his game week to week, and yet that was just quite a nice bit of insight from Fowler, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. I can see how that
one pundit that I thought was a smidge salty, I don't know if you picked up any of this, was McGinley.
Okay.
Why was he salty?
Just heard a few things. They weren't big. Like, there's a few just salty takes, particularly around short game and stuff like that. So he was quick to load the guns against Sam Bennett. I thought that was quite interesting. You know, he's like, I thought, okay, yeah, he's deliberate, but like cut the kid some slack. But particularly anything around the short grass, he was very quick to nip in with. Yeah, but they overseed this Ryan. It's really actually quite nice for them to chip off this. You know, I felt like he was making lots of excuses as to why these players were so goddamn good.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, let's just dial it back a bit.
I couldn't believe he's only played it twice.
Any amateur,
McGinley, yeah, bonkers, isn't it?
But I find like with any amateur or anybody who plays something for the first time, people are so quick to load into experience. It's like, you know, he shot like an amazing first 2 rounds, and then he didn't play his best in the 3rd round. But then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, well, the thing is, he's just not experienced this level. It's the pressure. It's like, well, you weren't saying that 2 days ago. Like, it's not like he's played golf his entire life. Like, granted, it might not be in Augusta, but that didn't bother him yesterday or the day before. He still shot lights out, played with Scotty Scheffler, and absolutely bossed it round. Like, the kid can play. Like it's not. Let's not just pile into him that he's not experienced enough just because he hits a few bad shots.
I think
not piling into Rory saying he's not experienced.
If you're on air for that amount of time, you are going to just make some blunders, aren't you? And that one didn't hit the ear so well. Something that's maybe a bit of a tangent, but I think,
we've been on air for quite a long time.
We've made several each. But I think one thing that is definitely worth covering before we sign off, because it flows nicely from the last podcast I think we released on the ball rollback with announcement with James Day. Tiger came out with some ringing words of support for the governing bodies.
And that's pretty much it.
Sam,
done and dusted now, isn't it?
Do you sort of feel that was a momentous endorsement, or do you think, you know what, the governing bodies probably were aware they had both Tiger and Rory on side before announcing that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think you know I think they know they've got their support within reason, but I think, to be brutally honest, I think most of these decisions are happening with consultation with the likes of McIlroy and Woods. You know,
it must be extremely difficult. Though,
because there's so much.
TaylorMade have quite clearly, you know, they've put out there in their social media. They've done this poll that 80% of their people that participated in the poll don't think there should be a rollback. I don't speak, you know, on TaylorMade's behalf, but it appears they're pointing in the direction of. Well, it appears they're pointing in the direction of they don't want to roll back.
I don't think any equipment manufacturer
would. 2 marquee players have come out and been like, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
so it's. I mean, I'm sure that they're getting pulled in lots of directions.
I think the pro rollback stuff is disproportionately high, possibly with a certain cross-section of golfers who are hyper invested in it, and I think there's a much larger groundswell of general support to not have a rollback, because it just, you know, I think, you know, for the everyday golfer, it's like, I'm not really that bothered. Why are you doing this, and the nuances of it all. So, I mean, what will happen, time will tell. In terms of where we're going and what's coming up, we've got a little trip down to Kent, which is why we're in Runnymede and meeting up here en route. Tomorrow morning, playing the short course at North Foreland, the par 3 course. Course diary feature coming in from there.
North Foreland.
It's a links, 18 holes.
Sort of a bit more cliff toppy / links. But
Great.
Do you remember Paul Craven came on our podcast and said, "Oh yeah, the par 3 course at North Foreland is absolutely brilliant." So I've
very excited to do
last night I was just firing out messages because I couldn't book a tee time on their thing online. So I was like, anybody that knew anyone at North Foreland, I was desperate to try and get. So we're all teed up for that. Can't wait for that.
Super.
Got some good stuff in. Ken gets to go and see St George's Hill, hopefully as well later this week. Jasper Miners evaluating, just been announced. Quite an exciting bit of news there in terms of what they're doing with Renaissance Golf Design, evaluating, and some other guys in terms of some restoration work there. So looking forward to going back and seeing that.
Jasper's kindly
We've got our spring meeting coming up at All Woodley in Moortown. We played All Woodley on Monday. We haven't even talked about it.
That is not far away. I sadly couldn't join you guys on that early scouting trip, but yes, a little over a month away. Or in fact, is it on the nose?
No getting away from the good doctor.
On the nose, 1 month today will be day one of the spring meeting,
Ground
2023.
And we've tested out the miking up of players and stuff, so we might actually, if I can really go to work on Tom, and I would like to do featured groups at Moortown and then final group at All Woodley. I think we should have a feature group.
Ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
I'll work on it with it. We'll get you around.
You find me 4 more cameramen. We'll sort it out.
No, it's okay. Well, I've got Harry. Anyway, I'm joking. So I'm not joking, but I will get it done.
Watch this.
And final plug. We were touching on rollback. Retro Golf Day at Minchinhampton. I'm in the process of trying to sort of sort out some saucy blades.
My little
We
baby.
actually have, that is your little baby, and we do actually have a few spots available for that.
Yeah, we still
and it's
got
buttons
probably-
cheap.
Yeah, it's 25 quid. Minchinhampton Old.
I thought it was 35 quid.
Could be 35 quid. Pretty sure. Yeah, it is 35 quid. 1 hour 40. It's 35 quid. Minchinhampton Old, which is perfect for retro gear. There's going to be like a little for everybody then that's coming on it. There's a little WhatsApp group created so that everyone can nose off about the blades they've purchased for this. It's got to be basically pre-Tiger, so pre-2000, pre-97.
The WhatsApp group is just called Rollback, isn't it? As far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah, so we're going with. I bought because I
think we should do it with the dress code though and
I
everything.
came to golf really late, so I
Pringle
don't
jumpers.
I don't have blades. So I had to go and purchase some. So I bought some Walter Hagen blades that I got off eBay for like 30 quid. And the 7-iron genuinely is the same loft as my pitching wedge.
But the thing is, you can get that fitted. And I think there's obviously James Day, very close friend of the pod, been on a couple of times. But, you guys have done some tinkering with your equipment with him and stuff like that. Ultimately, these beautiful heads, he's adamant that there's too much rhetoric around needing cavity back irons to get the ball in the air and stuff. Like reasonable players with a decent enough fit on these things, like you could get some beautiful old bladed heads.
He's also a professional golfer.
Well, yeah, but like
not anymore. Actually,
I think his point is that there is too much sort of anti-blade chat, and that maybe I'm looking forward to getting a set and seeing where we go with it. But I think that's good. I think that could be quite a good little mini series of events.
So, if interested,
but I think that's it. We're gonna. Taps back on podcast now. Film coming from Almouth Village.
Oh
yeah.
That's in the chamber. You've seen the film.
That's more to watch it.
No,
it's been in our WhatsApp group for about 3 weeks.
Yeah, but this WhatsApp group that you refer to,
it's ours. It's just me. It's just the three of us.
Yeah, but then there can literally be. Here's the Almouth Village film, and then all of a sudden, like if you've not looked at your phone for an hour, Sam's just loaded in with, sort of 5 or 6 other pieces of content or diatribe. We've gone off on a tangent that is just
because what I was really hoping is you weren't
at
Almouth Village and being like, yeah, I couldn't believe that. That's a £15 municipal 9-hole links in Northumberland. Like, oh my God, that looks unbelievable. But I've said it for you now.
There you go. Well, I could say that if you want me to.
I think it would feel unauthentic at this stage. I think that's all we have time for, Thomas.
I mean, yes, double the length of our usual pod, so...
Covered some ground there, haven't we?
Yeah, apologies. We felt like it needed to be a bit of a beast since we haven't really podded in a few weeks. And obviously...
Harry, thank you for joining.
We're a bit nervous about just the three of us. We had to draft in Harold. So, Harry, thank you for joining us.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for having me.
Expect more content in the pipeline, and until next time.
Adios.
Watch this.